Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 167 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us after a very, very entertaining weekend of boxing, especially in the San Diego, California area. San Diego hopefully starts getting some bigger fights. That's a big market that doesn't seem to be tapped. Obviously the DAZN card was there with Chocolatito-Gonzalez and Ramirez-Martinez. Which was a great fight. There was a lot of people beforehand who said that Chocolatito, if he lost, he would likely retire, but that didn't happen. And we were there live and in person covering that fight. So we were there in the flesh. It was good to be in the San Diego area for a fight. We'll touch on that as we get later on the show. We'll touch on the arena too. I wasn't a big fan of the arena, and I think neither of us were. The arena, its employees, not really a big fan. Probably San Diego needs more fights, but I don't know about that arena though. Hopefully there's more arenas in that general area. But thank you again for listening, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're at, however you're listening, we appreciate it. Jumping right back into it. Fight reviews this past Friday, the 4th of March, from the Save Mart Arena in Fresno, California on ESPN. Jose Ramirez returns after his lone defeat against Josh Taylor in a unification undisputed matchup at 140 pounds last year, as he gets the unanimous decision win over 12 rounds against Jose Sniper Pedraza. I think last week, Mike, I don't remember if you actually picked Pedraza, but I think you said that Pedraza had a chance, and I wasn't on the bandwagon because Pedraza is very hit or miss, and I just thought he's probably a lot more miss at this stage in his career than he was, 2-3 years ago. Obviously, like I said, Ramirez gets a 12-round unanimous decision win. What'd you think about the matchup overall?
I thought it was a good matchup. Good to see Ramirez back. Instead of coming back with a tune-up or a quick knockover, he came back in with a real test. I think we both agreed that, Pedraza is a good test. Obviously, a former world titles in 2 different divisions, has a tricky style, can be slick at times, good boxing IQ. But it looks like, Top Rank are just using him more now as that kind of gatekeeper status to the world level, because, we keep seeing him in, Top Rank v Top Rank fights quite often against, their up-and-coming stars. So, good test over. I thought Ramirez did well, 116, 112 on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. So that means it was probably 115, 113, a little bit closer since, he was at home in Fresno. But yeah, good performance from Ramirez. And I thought Pedraza looked pretty good as well.
So I only saw clips of it, certain highlights. So I didn't get a chance to see the entire fight. But did Pedraza, based on those scores, it seems like Pedraza was in the fight to an extent. Was it one of those fights that, okay, if you look at the scores, you think, okay, this was a close fight? Or is it one of those fights that when you look at the scores, you're like, okay, the scores might be close, but the fight was never in doubt for Ramirez?
I'd probably say the second one. I would say you could see that they kind of both had settled into their gears, and Ramirez was kind of like, one gear ahead, and they kind of just cruised it out. At no point did it seem like anyone was going to get stopped, in my opinion. But they just kind of cruised all the way through the fight. Just be good to see where Ramirez kind of goes from here. There's a lot of chances for those belts getting dispersed now. Josh Taylor has moved up, so I'm sure we'll see Ramirez back in with, I would imagine, the WBC shout.
Yeah, well, Taylor has said, after his last fight that he's going to move up. So I don't think he's officially vacated, but he has made those sentiments known. In terms of Pedraza, like you said, Top Rank has been utilizing him several times. Not just Top Rank. Tank Davis Pedraza's probably Tank Davis's best win in his career so far. Because when he did beat Pedraza was a lot more, I guess, dangerous at that time. I feel like he was a lot more of a threat and a contender, and Davis knocked him out. But do you think that obviously after this fight, Pedraza still has shown that he still has an ability to give you a fight, to be competitive of sorts, but do you think that, for example, Top Rank has kind of went to that water well too many times now to put him in this type of position?
I think we'll see some more. The Top Rank have quite a few people at that weight category, and obviously we're going to see Teofimo Lopez there sooner or later. So I can see.
I thought they were going to save Pedraza for Lopez. Honestly, I was surprised when this fight was announced.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they will, but just because obviously when someone like Teofimo Lopez faces Pedraza, they can say, if he wins, he's just defeated two weight world champions. So it's a good victory for him. And then you've got like Arnold Barboza as well. There's another guy who hasn't fought Pedraza, but I think we'll see Barboza in with Jack Catterall probably for the WBA at 140.
Does Lopez fight?
Sorry, WBO. Sorry,
WBO. Does Lopez fight Barboza first or Ramirez first? Or vice versa, however you want to say it.
With the rumblings that you hear, I would maybe go Barboza. But if you're Barboza, surely you'd probably want the WBO shot against Jack Catterall, because I know they were the top two. So unless something's changed in that, I'd imagine he would want the shot. He's been waiting around for a while. But then where does that leave Teofimo Lopez?
Right. Do you think Barboza's the type of guy to be, if he received two offers to fight Jack Catterall for the WBO vacant title, which is expected to be vacant, or to fight Teofimo Lopez for more money, who do you think Barboza would choose if he had options like that?
The problem you have there is, has Barboza earned a lot of money so far in his career? I'm sure he's probably at that stage where he needs some bigger paydays.
Isn't he almost to 30 wins?
Yeah, Barboza's a good record. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I feel like he hasn't. I mean, who's the biggest name on his resume at the moment?
Probably the one I think me and you were at when he fought Mike Alvarado.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like Barboza, like he's really kind of climbed the ladder, old school style. Yeah, and he really for some reason they haven't really been behind him to put him in a position, but he's really climbed the ladder. It's not like it took him 15 fights to get there, and he finally made it to like a mandatory position. It's taken him like essentially 30 fights, or it might be more than that. I don't even know. But I'm pretty sure he has more than 30 fights, or at least 30 fights. I mean, isn't it surprising that it's taken him this long to get to this point?
Just not having the backing. Like you said, he's done it the old school way. He's not done it the way, he's not an Olympian. He's not a Ryan Garcia with millions and millions of followers. He's had to convince Top Rank. He's been in with some tricky fights. He's been in with some people that he gained nothing from. He's been in with some fights, where the guys are hard and no one really knows who they are, but he still has to go through those hurdles and those steps to get to where he is. Like you said, exactly, you hit the nail on the head. He's done it the old school way without, the backing from a big promoter. So it depends what he wants. Does he want that big payday against Teofimo Lopez, or does he want the legacy? And, Barboza's been on the show, but we don't know him that well. Which one would he pick? It probably just depends what he needs more at that time.
No, right. You're absolutely right on that. I mean, like you said, regardless, 140 pounds still has great names, especially now that Lopez is essentially moving up. Jack Catterall's still there, who arguably should be the unified or undisputed champion at 140 pounds. Jose Ramirez, if you want to throw Pedraza in there, Arnold Barboza. Who else are we missing? Adrian Broner. You never know. Adrian Broner might be back in the mix at 140 pounds. You never know.
I tell you this is going to be a great shout. Zepeda.
Oh, I don't even know how I forgot about Chon Cepeda. That's true. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's true. Chon Cepeda. He's a dark horse. He's a dark horse in that whole division, I think. He's that guy that like kind of, people kind of forget about. He flies under the radar. But when you put him in there, he gets it done. He's that dark horse that if anybody wants to fight him, he'd likely be the favorite.
Zepeda's 35-2, so 37 fights to get to where he is. And Barboza's 26 fights. So, yeah.
That's what it is. Okay, so he's close to 30. I knew he was closer to 30. I assumed he was over 30. I mean, imagine a Barboza-Zepeda fight.
Local rivalry. That'd be a great one for Southern California.
Exactly. They're both SoCal fighters. Imagine that. So you would assume that they would put that maybe at the War Grounds, Carson, California, StubHub Center, Dignity Health, Home Depot Center, whatever you call it. It has like 6 different names over the last 10 years. Yeah, 140 pounds regardless is still a great division with a lot of names. And obviously Jose Ramirez has positioned himself to be back in the fold, especially if Taylor does indeed vacate all those titles and they're kind of up for grabs. So we'll see. But I wonder how much longer Jose Ramirez has at 140 pounds. Like when is he ready to move up? I mean, obviously his body's a little bit more adapted to 140 pounds.
Yeah, he's not a big muscle-bound guy, is he? He's tall and slim. I don't think he's one of the guys that throws around a lot of weights by the look of him. So maybe he makes the weight a little bit easier.
Right. Moving on that card as well, Joet Gonzalez. I believe this is his first fight under Top Rank, if I'm not mistaken, since leaving Golden Boy Promotions, who was his main promoter for quite a few years. In his debut for Top Rank, he gets the 9th round stoppage over Gio Santasisma. I think I said that right. This was for the vacant WBO International Featherweight title at 126 pounds. So what happened on this fight? That I remember seeing clips of it, and the stoppage kind of seemed a bit premature. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, some people were kind of complaining about it because they stopped him, and then there's that old California rule where it's classed as a KO and they don't acknowledge the TKO because the referee stopped it or something like that. Very strange rule that California Commission have that lots of people were posting about. But I thought it was an action-packed fight, really, really close. I know a lot of people had the scorecards. I think it was like 77-75 after 8 rounds. So, there was, pretty close fight back and forth. Gets Joet, back in the win column, obviously local fighter for us. And he's always seems to do really, really well. He's always ranked really highly in the WBO ranking. So I'm sure we'll probably see him go for that WBO title again.
Yeah. I'm glad Top Rank, gave him another chance and picked him up on their roster. And obviously it seems like they're trying to position him into another world title shot, maybe an actual world title, depending at the featherweight division. And then I think he's also got the younger brother, Joust Gonzalez. I believe he's still under Golden Boy contract. Am I correct on that?
I think so. I think when Robert Diaz was on here, I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah, I think, because they were both signed to Golden Boy. And I think, unless that news hasn't broken or nobody has reported that, but I believe his younger brother, Joust Gonzalez, Joet and Joust, what a pair of names, huh? He is still signed with Golden Boy Promotions. So that'll be interesting to see how his career progresses over there on Golden Boy. And his brother obviously across the way in Top Rank. Moving on, this past Saturday, the 5th of March, from the Pachanga Arena in San Diego, California on DAZN, an event that we covered live and in person, like I said, in San Diego, California. The return of Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez as he gets a unanimous decision win over 12 rounds against El Rey Julio Cesar Martinez. This was for the vacant WBC Diamond Super Flyweight title. Obviously, Martinez was I think, 5-week substitution after El Gallo Juan Francisco Estrada had to pull out of the fight. I believe, was it because of COVID? Was that because of it, or what happened? Was it COVID, right?
Yeah, COVID, yeah.
Yeah. And then putting in Martinez, who is a WBC champion at 112 pounds, and tells Eddie Hearn, his promoter, hey, I'll move up and fight him. I mean, not a bad substitution. I love the fight. I know last week, or actually earlier this week in our bonus episode, with Constantino Garcia of Little Giant Boxing and Steve Kim of the 3 knockdown rule, I know you had picked Martinez. You thought Martinez was just going to be too much for Chocolatito, but I had picked Chocolatito. I think I just thought that from my perspective, that Chocolatito's instinct, his veteran instinct, was going to take over and essentially frustrate Julio Cesar Martinez, which I think, if you agree with me, tell me if you agree with me or not. I think that's what happened, especially after Martinez. I mean, it was a great fight. There was a lot of moments. I think that was a vintage Chocolatito Gonzalez performance, but I think he did frustrate Martinez quite a few times throughout that fight, especially when Martinez would crash his gloves together to kind of say, "Bring it on." Okay, you got me with a good shot. But I think my guess was right on the money. His veteran instincts took over. It was vintage Chocolatito Gonzalez. He got I believe, the unanimous decision win. What did you think about the fight?
Well, it was one-way traffic, wasn't it? Chocolatito, like early on, you could see that, just his style was just perfect, to counter, Martinez, who just kept throwing, those shots, and then he would just kind of like punch him in between, or sometimes he would just counter him straight away. And Martinez was really just too easy to hit, very flat-footed. I just thought that when I did my pick for Martinez, that Gonzalez didn't look great really in the sparring sessions we went to, and was kind of getting hurt to the body a lot. But Martinez didn't really throw too many body shots at that time, and perfect. Gonzalez looked years and years younger just due to the clash of styles, and it was great to see. Great to be ringside in one of his probably best performances over the last few years. And we never know when Father Time's gonna come out victorious, and Gonzalez isn't gonna look as good. So it was great for, I think, me and you just to witness that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like you said, a lot of people thought Father Time might have caught up with Chocolatito Gonzalez, but he made that known that time is not here yet, and really showed that he still has it. So he's still in the mix. I believe Eddie Hearn said they're still going to explore the Estrada fight.
Yeah, I spoke to Gonzalez's manager afterwards, and he was saying that contractually it looks like the Juan Estrada fight for the WBA Super should be on the cards, but then Eddie Hearn talked about doing like a little round robin. Then they having a couple of semifinals, including Jesse Rodriguez, who holds the WBC. His brother Josh Franco holds the WBA. You've got Kazuti Ioka holds the WBO, and then Fernando Martinez just recently beat Ancajas and has the IBF.
Yeah, I mean, what a round robin that would be. Either way, Chocolatito Gonzalez is, I feel, would you call him the money maker in that whole division? Like, if anybody's going to fight the money maker in that whole division in terms of draw and eyeballs that are going to tune in, it's going to be Chocolatito.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I don't see, anyone else with a bigger name really in that division. Martinez obviously is fairly new. Ioka's, not known on these shores too well. Joshua Franco and Bam Rodriguez will probably get there eventually. They're fairly new, still really, really young. I think Bam Rodriguez looks like the one though that everyone's behind due to his performance, and Eddie Hearn keeps, saying his name and throwing his name into the mix. So it looks like they've all got some stock in him. And Juan Estrada's Juan Estrada. Juan Estrada and Chocolatito just go together, don't they? So hopefully we get to see that.
Do you think Josh Franco and his brother Bam Rodriguez, do you think they would fight, or do you think it would be like a Klitschko situation where, like, oh no, we promised We promised her mom and dad that we wouldn't fight.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be that. I would imagine the dad would say, like, used to never fighting each other. They can just hold a belt each like they do now and, pick up another one, or maybe one will hold one and the other one will hold all the rest, like Vladimir and Vitaly. And then, one of them loses or retires and the other one picks them up and wipes up the division. But I'm looking forward to seeing Jesse Rodriguez out again.
Yeah. Either way, it's still a very interesting division. We'll see what Chocolatito does next. I still think that they're going to go put him in the Estrada fight maybe later on this year. And I would think Estrada would be like, no, I don't want to fight anybody else. I want that fight. So,
it just makes sense. It's the biggest payday for both, I would imagine. Chocolatito's not getting any younger. So, strike while the iron's hot. He's probably got to try and get as many fights in as he can over this next, year or two. He's probably got, a maximum 2-3 fights left. And
where do you think they put that fight? I mean, obviously this was supposed to be in San Diego, but does it go back to San Diego? I don't think it does.
I think Southern California.
Yeah, I think Southern California, but I think LA and not San Diego.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it'll be LA somewhere, but I don't think San Diego.
Yeah, either way, I think Estrada and Chocolatito will meet again later on this year. Also on the card, the co-main event. The main event was great. Vintage Chocolatito, as I keep saying, but that co-main event really stuck out in my mind. That was, you talk about Mexican style. That was Mexican style. What was it? The third round. I'm sorry, not even fifth. I thought it was 5 rounds. The third round, it was a firefight the whole time for 3 rounds between Mauricio Lara and Emilio Sanchez. Lara gets the KO, the knockout at the end of the round. At the end of the third round, as the bell was sounding, he knocks out Emilio Sanchez in the corner. Emilio Sanchez's legs buckle under him, and he falls straight on his back. Before this, they were going at it. Sanchez was throwing body shots, and there was times where those body shots were working for him. They were working for him on Lara, because you could see that Lara was hurt in a couple rounds, which made the whole fight interesting. Because we already were aware that Lara could fight after, obviously getting thrust into a type of limelight after his victory over Josh Warrington over there across the pond. So we knew, okay, he could fight. And Emilio Sanchez, from LA, he, good sparring out here, he could fight too. And that's exactly what we got. I think after the first round, I think I told you as they went back to their corners, I was like, this isn't going to the cards. Somebody's going to get knocked out. And 2 rounds later, that's exactly what happened. I think Sanchez went down twice, if you count the final knockout. And that final knockout was nasty. Lara kind of, I think it was like a sweeping right. Was it a sweeping right or a sweeping left that he really that was the final shot? And then, like I said, Sanchez's legs buckled under him and he falls to the ground. And then the referee, California Commission's referee Ray Corona, who's been on the show before, I think twice before with us, once or twice. He tripped over. I don't know if he tripped over Sanchez's feet, which I think he did, or Lara's feet. But as soon as Lara got that sweeping knockout, I believe it was a sweeping right hand. It might have been a left, but I think it was a right. Ray Corona, as soon as it was like perfect timing. As soon as he saw that shot land, Ray Corona jumped in. Do you think, let me ask you this, do you think Ray Corona jumped in at the end right there because he heard the bell and then got up or kind of made himself aware that Sanchez was knocked out and he stopped the fight? Or do you think he jumped in after he saw that shot because he's like, oh, okay, it's over?
I'll give him some credit and say that, he saw the shot come in and was kind of jumping in to end it because the crowd was so loud you couldn't hear the bell.
Right. Yeah.
He's a lot closer than we are, but we couldn't hear it.
Would you say the crowd was a lot louder for that fight than they were the main event?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. They were totally loud for that fight.
Yeah, the Lara Sanchez one, you didn't know what was going to happen. Like you, it could end at any time. I think after a few rounds of the Chocolatito-Martinez one, you could both see that they could take each other's power.
Right.
And you had a sense after a while, like, this is going 12 and it's going to be a clean sweep for Chocolatito.
Right. Yeah. It was still an entertaining fight over 12 rounds.
Yeah.
It was a great, great for the boxing, for the sweet science of the sport. It was a great fight. But you talk about like what the casual fan wants. They want knockouts. They want, brutal knockouts. They want a firefight. That co-main event was what those type of fans want. I mean, what every type of fan wants, even the hardcore boxing fans want. Lara's dangerous, man. Like I told you right after before, and then we also talked to some other members of the press after the fight too, and after the entire event, where we had said nobody's going to want to fight Lara at 126 pounds. He's too dangerous. He's too dangerous, and at this point, he doesn't bring enough money to the table to justify the risk. So, he's kind of like, before this Canelo fight, he's kind of like Bivol, dangerous, but, isn't financially justified because of his talent surpasses that. I think Lara's the same. I think everybody at 126 pounds is going to stay away from him, and he's just going to have to stay busy and find people to fight him. I mean, what do you think? And he's only 24. He's only 24 years old.
Lara is?
I think he's young. Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez, he's had.
Do you have it pulled up? Pull it up. Pull it up. I think. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I know he was. Yeah, right. He's 24.
Man, he looks old.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
He? He's rugged. He's rugged, and when I saw his age on the I think the details or the bout sheet or whatever we got from the press, from Matchroom Boxing there, I was surprised about that because I thought for sure he was at least 30. I was like, oh, okay, he's probably like in his early 30s or something like that. But he's 24. That means he's not even in his prime yet.
Do you know what I would absolutely love to see? And I haven't even seen the first fight because it's not being made yet. But give me a trilogy: Lara, Navarrete.
Oh man, who do you think wins that?
No idea.
Exactly.
Unreal.
I don't know who wins that. That's a good fight.
Unreal fight.
But I don't
Two
think
massive, heavy-handed guys, unorthodox, throw crazy punches from crazy angles.
But do you think Top Rank works with Matchroom to make that fight, or vice versa?
I don't know, because Top Rank do like him, don't they? How many times did he fight the other year? Like 5 times?
It seems like he fought a lot.
Yeah, they ran him out. He was like out of the top, like bigger names, I guess. He was always out all the time. So Top Rank do like him. Please, honestly.
That'd be a great fight.
Unbelievable fight.
But I'm telling you, he's too dangerous right now. Nobody's gonna want to fight him. After that performance this past Saturday in San Diego, California, and that knockout, that's contender for knockout of the year. I'm not saying, I'm not jumping the gun. I know it's only March. I'm not saying it's knockout of the year. It's at this point in this first quarter of the year, it's on the list for knockout of the year. When we get to December, we'll see what ranks, after all these several fights that are, scheduled to happen in the next 9 months or so. But right now, that's on the list for knockout of the year. It's a contender, right?
Yeah, it has to be. The only thing I think,
and it was right. It was right at the end of the fight too, which was right at the end of the round.
Yeah, I think the only thing it lacked is like a big name fighter in it. Will grab the attention when it gets to the end of the years. Unfortunately, a lot of these things become a popularity contest. And the fighter, just a well-named fighter with a fairly decent knockout will win it over that. Unfortunately, but yeah, that was definitely. I mean, if someone's listening to this and they haven't watched it, it's only 9 minutes to watch it from start to finish. It's 3 rounds.
Yeah, you can watch. You can watch it on their YouTube channel.
Yeah,
on the DAZN YouTube channel.
Yeah,
yeah. It was 3. It was 3 rounds of just fire, just a firefight. It really was. But it was very entertaining. So if you want to show like people like a boxing fight, like a casual fan who likes that type of stuff, show them those 9 minutes. Show them those 9 minutes and like, oh man, this is crazy. I mean, what?
After seeing that, I think I have to give him more credit for when he beat Warrington. I don't know, because at the time everyone was like, Josh didn't.
It was a fluke.
Yeah, like Josh didn't take it seriously. He didn't know he was fighting a nobody. He thought it was a warm up. After watching that, I'm like, nope.
No, he's dangerous.
So. Yep.
He's a threat.
Yeah,
he's a threat, man. I mean, who else is? Because he knocked out Warrington too, right?
Yeah, in the first fight, yeah, and the second one got called off because of injury.
Who else is knocking people out like that at 126 pounds?
Well, the big names are obviously Navarrete, Leo Santa Cruz.
I know, but in terms of that power, that knockout power, who else is knocking people out like that at 126 pounds right now?
Yeah, nobody in the top 10, not on a regular basis.
I don't think anybody is. I think you talk about a knockout artist at the moment in that division. I think it's him.
Him and Navarrete. Navarrete's 35 wins, 29 knockouts.
Navarrete too, but I mean, just based on the little exposure that we've seen over the last couple fights of Lara since he fought Warrington. I mean, in terms of power and aggressiveness, and behind those power shots, and especially those knockout shots, would you say Lara probably has the upper hand in power? Just looking at it, I'm not saying it is, but just kind of looking at it from the outside.
Maybe Navarrete moved up, right?
I believe so, from 122.
So maybe Lara is a little bit of a more natural at that weight. It's only one way to find out, Danny.
And he's only 20. Like I said, he's only 24, and he's eventually going to move up to 130, maybe 135. I mean, what does his career end? Maybe 140.
I can't wait.
Who knows? He's on my radar, man. Like you said, like with the Warrington fight, everybody thought it was a fluke. Like, oh, okay, well, let's see. Then the second fight happened. It was stopped because of an injury. And now after this fight, it's like, okay, like people have to take him seriously. He's a threat. He is a threat at 126 pounds, and he's only 24 years old. So we'll see how the rest of the year progresses. I hope we see him again at least 2 more times, maybe 3 more times, but at least 2 more times in the next 9 months. Rounding off that card, Mark Castro, who is the amateur, multiple-time amateur champion, national champion, and world champion that Matchroom signed a couple of years ago, gets the 6-round unanimous decision win over Julio Madera. However, Castro was knocked down in round 2. There was a couple moments in this fight, especially when he had that knockdown, where him and Madera were going back and forth, and pretty fun exchanges. And Madera just caught him in an exchange. He beat him to the punch. I wouldn't call it a flash knockdown. They were exchanging, and Castro just got beat to the punch and got knocked down. I mean, what'd you think about the fight?
Wasn't impressed by Castro, to be honest with you. I think he's maybe another one that's just all social media hype. And I remember I watched it back, and I was watching some of the highlights of the fight as well, and just headhunts. I'd love to see the CompuBox stats and to see how many body punches he threw, because I don't think he threw 5.
Or the Sky Sports stats.
Yeah, or the Sky Sports stats, and then compare them. But yeah, not just headhunted constantly. Early on, his head movement was good, because obviously he always posts those videos of him, dodging the bag with a blindfold on. But as soon as he became under pressure, that just stopped. He kind of forgot to move his head a lot, got tagged far too easily, and then just kind of got lost. You could see that going back to his corner after the knockdown, he looked kind of like emotional. And also, I don't know whether it was a problem with his breathing or what, but his mouth was open from round 3. Something like that, like constantly. I don't know if that was due to an injury, just something I noticed that he had. He kept breathing, and he leans over top of his feet as well. He has his head far too forward. It's over his knees, so he makes some very basic, technical mistakes that I spotted in that fight. So I don't know whether it's a change of training needed. Get away from his pops and move to someone more, a more well-known trainer, or maybe just somebody who's a full-time professional for years and years and years, but. After that performance, he's not going far.
Yeah, I think he'll eventually, change trainers. I think it's just early in his career right now. He still has some time to, adapt. He's just getting a lot more attention a lot of other younger fighters don't get because of his amateur pedigree. And, most of his fights up until this point, he was on Canelo cards. He's got a pretty decent social media following, and he does it, where he puts on the blindfold and he moves in and out of the way of the weight that swings back and forth or something like that. And then he's got, he looks like Elon Musk. So there's that comparison that they give. So he's got, he has a lot more attention than anybody, the majority of other fighters do at this point in their career who are just starting out.
Concentrate on the bread and butter, though.
No, right.
He's not a Ryan Garcia. Like, as soon as his boxing career goes, all that other stuff goes.
Possibly.
So he needs to knuckle down and concentrate on that, and hopefully that scare will make him realize that.
Well, we had heard, we were told by somebody who was able to see him in backstage after his fight, and saw that he was emotional, following his fight, even though he won. But maybe, some fighters, when they get knocked down or something like that, even if they win, they become emotional. Excuse me. So that's what we had heard. Obviously, we didn't see it, but we did hear from a credible source that he was emotional backstage after his fight. Luckily for him and his team, he got the win. But based on that information, it seemed like he was pretty upset that he was likely knocked down, kind of like he made a mistake. He recovered enough to get the win, but he felt like maybe he needs perfection. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's still young, and maybe, just disappointed with that performance, on a big stage as well. So obviously, I'm sure he went in there of high hopes, thinking, you know what, I'm going to knock this guy out. The guy's a come forward fighter. It's going to be perfect for me. Probably had high expectations in his head, and then the fact that he scraped through with a points victory and also got dropped. Yeah, I can see it. He's still very, very young.
Yeah. Obviously, he wanted the knockout too, or the stoppage, but at the end of the day, he still got a W in the win column, which overall is better for his career and his progression. And also, there was also a female debut for Matchroom. Sky. What's her last name? Sky Nicholson. She was actually at the Canelo Bivol press conference that we were at on Wednesday of last week as well in San Diego, California, the kickoff press conference. She was there, obviously to get some exposure. She did a couple of interviews and stuff like that. But she was able to get the victory in her debut in San Diego, California, on the DAZN card. I think it was before. Yeah, was she on the broadcast of DAZN, or was she the before the bell, the YouTube portion?
She was the YouTube portion, if I remember rightly. She was the second fight, about 3:30 in the afternoon. Good performance, against the local fighter. I think it was Jesse Juarez. She looks good. She looks like she knows her way around boxing ring. She had a lot of amateur fights. Was sat chatting to her coach Eddie Lamb, and it's the first female fight he'd had, and he'd trained, and he said that she's really good. I expect big things. She's a good character, talks well as well. So I think Matchroom by far have the biggest group of women fighters. I think PBC have none, Top Rank have one. Obviously it's good for Matchroom, I think, because obviously now they've got Ebony Bridges, they've got Sky Nicholson, and then obviously they're doing DAZN Australia, so kind of makes sense, right? Yeah. To get someone like her.
Yeah. Eddie Hearn is building his stable over there. Moving on, fight previews. Oh, actually, before we go into fight previews, I wanted to talk about the arena in San Diego, California. I'm going as far as say that was one of the most, and this isn't Matchroom's fault. It's not Matchroom's fault or DAZN's fault. But in terms of the employees who worked at that arena, the ones at least that we interacted with, some of the most unorganized employees I've ever dealt with at any arena, at any fights I've ever covered. And we've covered fights at Staples Center, Carson, California at the StubHub Center, the Mandalay Bay, the MGM Grand, the T-Mobile Arena, the Cosmopolitan,
I would say all Vegas and all Southern California.
Yeah, the Galen Center and the USC, a lot of other smaller venues from Vegas to Southern California, and then Phoenix, the Phoenix Arena. I forgot what what it's called. I apologize to our Arizona listeners. We've covered pretty much at every major arena, even a lot of smaller arenas from Vegas all the way down to San Diego. And that was one of the most unorganized and I'll go as far to say and unprofessional experiences I've ever had with any arena staff. In terms of, the emails that we had got with the instructions from Matchroom Boxing, were great. They were detailed, but when we get to the arena and we try to go through a door to follow the emails instructions, they say, "Oh no, you're not. You're supposed to stand in line." Or we're like, "What are you talking about?" And then you go to the box office, and then they're just like, "Oh, this is it." And then you go back to you try to get into the arena, and then they say, "Oh, where's your stuff at?" And you're just like, "Oh, she took it back at the box office." And they're like, "Oh, well, you can't come in." And like, "What are you talking about?" And then you have to go back. Then you get into the arena, and the employees kind of. I remember we asked like two employees or three employees on directions on how to get to our sections or our seats. Pretty much how to navigate the logistical portion of the arena, and they didn't even know. I know there was two of them that I asked initially, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not sure. You're gonna have to go over there and talk to those people." And then the parking lot attendants when we came in, that was probably the worst experience I had. Some lady who worked there. Seriously, one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had covering a fight or covering any type of boxing event here in Southern California or any venue for that matter here on the West Coast. Matchroom Boxing, DAZN, they were fine. Their emails and directions were fine. But I wanted to throw that out there just because, obviously we made it onto our areas and we got some stuff going and we got some interviews and content and stuff and but the hurdles and the obstacles we had to go through just to get to the finish line of that night absolutely sucked. Just absolutely sucked. But who knows? Hopefully if they have another fight at that arena, the Pechanga Arena, because San Diego was a hot crowd. They deserve a lot more fights. There's a lot of people in that whole area from San Diego to TJ. There's millions of people. There's a lot of boxing fans, a lot of, Mexican representation, Mexican American representation. They're fight fans. They're going to show up if you bring the fights there. So they deserve fights. I don't know if there's another arena. I think San Diego State University has an arena that maybe they could use. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but I think it's like 10,000 seats or something, 12,000 seats, something like that. Maybe they can look into that in the future. But yeah, in terms of that arena, I just hope if they use that arena again, they don't. It's not the same group of employees at that arena, But shout out to the San Diego fans. They were hot. They love their boxing right there, and they definitely deserve more. Moving on to this upcoming weekend, the 12th of March, from the Nottingham Arena on DAZN, Lee Wood goes up against Michael Conlan. This is for the WBA featherweight title. All right, Mike, this is the ultimate test for Michael Conlan. The Top Rank has built him up until this point to get this world title shot. How does it end?
I would have to go with Lee Wood. From what we've seen through Michael Conlan so far, he's failed to deliver, really. Top Rank have put some push behind him, and he's fought at like Madison Square Gardens. They always bring him out, for St. Patrick's Day and stuff like that. But yeah, I think most people would say he's failed to deliver on the amateur career he's had, and being a big Top Rank signing, he's not impressed. He has not impressed. I think Lee Wood probably late on stops him, to be honest with you.
Or you think it ends in a stoppage?
Well, I know everyone seems to know that Lee Wood is heavy-handed, but he's also a good boxer, and I think he would just be too big, too strong, and I think he might even outbox Conlan a little bit. I think Conlan's a little bit robotic, a little bit stiff.
Interesting.
It's going to have to be an unbelievable performance from what we've seen from Conlan. It's going to have to be one of those ones where he rises to the occasion, like Jack Catterall did. A lot of people were saying, Jack Catterall's going from like C-level fighters to A-level when he fought Josh Taylor. But, he rose to the occasion and he proved everybody wrong. And that would,
So if Conlan does that, then you'll think you'll give him the credit, and he's the real deal.
Yeah, because he's not really fought anybody of note. He's got to 16-0. It's kind of like, sounds harsh, but he's been a bit of a St. Patrick's Day gimmick, hasn't he, for Top Rank? They just wheel him out to the East Coast in New York, every St. Patrick's Day because of the Irish contingent over there. Sounds.
Well, it is a business. It is a business.
Yeah,
it's been working so far. It's been working so far.
That's kind of what they've been doing with him, unfortunately. But he's been getting paid well, so he probably doesn't mind.
Well, this is the ultimate test, Mike. This is the ultimate test. This is where Top Rank built him to this point. And, it comes to a point where, okay, we guided you to this point, and now it's time for you to seal the deal. Get that world title, and this is when your career starts taking off, not only from a legacy standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see this fight. I'm not sure who wins. I mean, I guess if you want to twist my hand or twist my arm here, I'd go with Lee Wood, but I'm going to sit on the fence with this one. I know we don't like people who sit on the fence here, but I'm just very intrigued to see how Conlan performs in this. This is because this is a world title fight, and this is essentially the toughest test of his career up until this point. Let's see how he responds, and if he wins, he becomes world champion, and see how he defends it. I'm intrigued by this fight. I'm intrigued by this fight mostly because this is the first real legitimate test at the world championship level for Michael Conlan. So very interesting to see. Also on the card, Terry Harper, 11-1-1, goes up against Yamila Belen Abelaneda. I know I messed that up. This is for the vacant WBA Intercontinental Lightweight title. Also on the card, Gary Coley, 13-0, goes up against Miguel Vasquez, 44-10. 44-10. That's going into Gabe Rosado territory right there.
That should be a good fight.
You think so?
Good undercard fight. I think so. Yeah.
Who wins?
Oh, well, going by how little the judges gave Miguel Vasquez against Ritson, maybe Gary Cully, but that's a good shout.
You gotta pick somebody.
I might have to go with you. I might go with Vasquez.
Whoa, really? Decision or stoppage or knockout?
Vasquez, though, is a bit like Pedraza. He blows hot and cold. Like, he'll get some really good victories, and then he goes and faces someone. Like, I remember when he lost on points to O'Hara Davis, and O'Hara Davis is pretty bad. So it just shows you what Miguel Vasquez is like. But you can tell by his record, he's one of those guys that'll just take anybody. He may be fit, he may not be fit, but he just wants a payday. But if we see the Vasquez that fought Ritson that just boxes from the outside, I think Gary Cody will have trouble walking him down.
Very interesting. Now I'm very interested in that fight just because you said that. Because that's right. I forgot about the Vasquez Ritson fight. I mean, you never know with the experience that Vasquez has over 50 fights. That comes in handy. And then Cully 13-0. Sometimes all those fights, even though he has 10 losses, all those fights are experiences. You never know. Moving on, news and notes. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we were at the Canelo Bivol kickoff press conference in San Diego, California last Wednesday. Obviously Canelo Alvarez and Dimitri Bivol will be fighting at it on May 7th on the DAZN pay-per-view for the 175-pound WBA light heavyweight world title that Bivol currently holds. And we were able to speak to Eddie Hearn about a couple different things, and we were also there as reporters were around him for a media scrum. And before we kind of go into the DAZN, actually, let's start on the DAZN pay-per-view since I just mentioned that. You asked Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing about DAZN pay-per-view, pretty much saying like, oh, how you guys were beating the drum for subscriptions. no more pay-per-view when DAZN launched, and you've been doing that for the last couple of years. How are the fans going to react? What do you think the reaction is going to be? He gave his take, and then you also asked him about Canelo possibly fighting in the UK, and Eddie Hearn, obviously gave us some words, and you can hear him right here. I'll play him for you guys right now, and then we'll react on the other side of it.
ESPN pay-per-view, Showtime pay-per-view. In the business of Canelo Alvarez, we have to put together a model that will enable us to bring him, or we don't. We're not players, and we'd rather be players with that model than not get Canelo Alvarez. So the DAZN customer has to understand the subscription model lives and reigns supreme, and so does the value for money that's delivered. But once or twice a year, every now and again, whether it's AJ against Usyk, whether it's Canelo against Triple G or Bivol, whoever, that fight is going to be one-off pay-per-views.
When do you think we'll see Canelo in the UK?
Well, he wants to fight there in December. He's said to me, and Eddie Reynoso said to me, December or London or Guadalajara. That's where I want my December fight to be. Obviously, we have John Ryder, who's mandatory. Also, you have Makabu, who's a fight at cruiserweight, could take place as well. So,
would the Makabu fight be in the UK?
In Guadalajara, yeah. But at the same time, he's got Bivol to get through. Then he's got Golovkin to get through. But they're already talking about fighting 3 times this year. It's incredible. I think this Bivol fight is a very, very tough fight. If you look at Dimitri Bivol up there, you see a fresh young man, you see a great athlete, you see a very strong, powerful light heavyweight who's technically very sound. I think this is a really, really tough fight.
Did you know that you'd made it in the US now? They don't call you Eddie Hearns?
Well, he does. Yeah, Canelo calls me Eddie Hearns, but I like it. I wouldn't feel right if they didn't call me Hearns.
What's your reaction to that, Mike? You handle that interview. What do you think about what he said?
I think we understand. We don't like, but we understand the DAZN pay-per-views. How are they going to pay those enormous purses to Canelo, to Anthony Joshua's, as long as it just stays to those people that we all probably agree are pay-per-view fighters. We don't need to be paying for Joseph Parker v. Chisora. That's not a pay-per-view. Those guys don't deserve that type of money, probably. That's my reaction to that part. Him going over to fight John Ryder, it's not the biggest fight in the world, but I'm sure, Canelo just going to the UK, regardless of who he fights, will just sell out. Big boxing fans in the UK, they'll come out just to see, Canelo. It could be their only time. It could be the only chance to get to see him. So whoever he fights, I'm sure will sell out.
I think that Canelo leaving Golden Boy and severing his contract in a lawsuit with DAZN and Golden Boy forced DAZN's hand in the pay-per-view market, because they had him for 11 fights, an 11-fight deal. And I'm sure in all those fights, I'm assuming it was all on subscriptions. Hey, all these 11 fights are going to be on DAZN. We'll pay you $40 million or what have you, it was something around there for each fight. And it'll be a subscription based. People will pay $20 a month or $100 annually, and they'll get your fight, 2 or 3 times a year, however many times you fight. But I think if you really dissect it, regardless of how people feel, obviously DAZN looks really bad. They have egg on their face by saying, by beating this drum, saying, oh, no pay-per-view, the death of pay-per-view, no more pay-per-view, blah, 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 blah. But when they lost Canelo from that 11-fight deal, even though he's still fought with them in a majority of his fights after breaking that contract, they know that he's still a free agent technically on a fight-by-fight basis. And him going over there to Showtime and fighting Caleb Plant, and then before announcing this partnership for the rest of the year, essentially with DAZN and Matchroom, obviously Showtime and PBC were in the mix, offering their offer for Canelo Alvarez to come fight with them. DAZN's hand was forced. Canelo forced their hand, like he said. Look, whether you like it or not, regardless of how DAZN was beating the drum about the death of pay-per-view, Eddie Hearn's pretty much right. He's like, well, if we want to be in the business of Canelo Alvarez, we have to compete with him. We have to offer pay-per-view. We do. if I was him, I would have said, look, like maybe he didn't want to go down that route because, it was kind of like, I don't want to mention that it was a Canelo negative situation in his career. He had to get out of his contract. But I mean, I think it would have added more credibility to that argument. He could have said, well, look, like when we had Canelo under contract for 11 fights, or when he was with Golden Boy, it was a subscription-based model. For 11 fights, it was going to be guaranteed subscriptions. But when that relationship was severed and Canelo filed a lawsuit and all that stuff started happening, I think DAZN knew, okay, we have to get into we have to offer pay-per-view. We do, because that's the only way we're going to be in the business. Because I think they knew that Showtime and PBC were going to be able to offer a little bit more resources and offer Canelo a piece of the back end, a piece of the pay-per-view revenue that DAZN wasn't likely going to offer. So yeah, the zone looks really bad, and it sucks for fans. It sucks for everybody who's a boxing fan who had the zone, because the value's there. The value is still kind of there, and we're not beating the drum, saying, oh yeah, do the zone this, do the zone that. But having a Canelo fight, having an Anthony Joshua fight, and all that, it was a great value for your money. I mean, now it's unfortunate because you have to pay. Either if you pay monthly, you pay $20, and then Canelo fights and you get a discounted rate of $60. But at the end of the day, if you don't pay the $20 for the subscription, you pay $79.99, $80 for the actual fight, and you get, I think, 1 month of the zone, which is still it's not really a discount. And if you kind of dissect it like that, they're not really giving you a discount. They're just kind of offsetting it, and it looks like a discount. It's not really a discount. You're paying $80 regardless. It's going to be there. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks that Canelo's not going to be. You can't watch him for $20, or if you break down the $100 over 12 months, it's like $8 and change a month. It sucks that we can't watch Canelo for those prices anymore. We had him for a couple fights. Where we were able to watch him for those fights. But I think, hopefully everybody enjoyed that. It sucks. It really does suck, like I said. But I think Eddie Hearn was right. Whether you like him or not, or whether you like the pay-per-view or not. I'm not saying that we like the pay-per-view. Obviously, we prefer if it was still subscription-based or whatever. But I mean, how much more truthful could you get where he said, if we wanted to be the business of Canelo Alvarez, we had to jump in that game, right?
Yeah, wherever Canelo lands, he's pay-per-view. So we can't kick off at DAZN for it. If he's with Top Rank, he's pay-per-view. If he's with PBC, he's pay-per-view.
Right.
So Canelo is pay-per-view.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, it sucks. It does suck. DAZN looks dumb, for doing that whole commercialized, what do you call it, program of saying pay-per-view's dead, like I keep saying, and then now they have to do this. But if Canelo was still with them in that long-term deal, we wouldn't be in this situation. But I think the writing was on the wall when Canelo severed that contract with Golden Boy and DAZN. I think if you really dissect it to that point, you rewind the clock back to that point, I think people should know, okay, if they wanted Canelo back on their platform, they're eventually going to offer it, because ESPN, Showtime, Fox, PBC, all those platforms, they're going to offer pay-per-view to him and offer him a share of that pay-per-view back in the buys, which is, for somebody of Canelo's stature, it's very valuable. So, yeah, whatever, you're still going to be able to see him. You just have to pay a lot more money, which sucks, but it is what it is. He's a great fighter. What are we supposed to do? Put the value there, people will pay. You don't put the value there, they're not going to pay. Moving on. Also, you also spoke to Eddie Hearn about the Dillion Whyte situation. I know you had spoken, and I think Lance Pugmire of USA Today, formerly of the LA Times, was also speaking to Eddie Hearn at this moment. As I mentioned, there was a couple of reporters around Eddie Hearn at this time. Eddie Hearn kind of expanded on the Dillion Whyte situation, how Whyte didn't show up for the kickoff press conference last week with Tyson Fury for their fight. Eddie Hearn kind of explains why that happened and pretty much the situation why Dillion Whyte felt insulted and the reasoning behind him not showing up to that kickoff press conference. Let's listen to it and we'll react on the other side.
One of Dillion Whyte's requests was that the funds be placed in escrow. It's a lot of money. And some people want to buy a Rolls Royce, but they can't afford to fill it up with petrol. So they also wanted Dillion Whyte to fly in on a coach airline, like a low fare airline from Portugal that was 2 hours in. And we're in a global pandemic still, and he's thinking, I've been waiting so long for this opportunity. And people might think that a private jet is an illustrious ask. Not when you bid $42 million for a fight. It's not. Also, they wanted to give him a handful of tickets for the fight. I think 6 or something like that. So 90,000 stadium. So Dillion Whyte felt that he was being disrespected. So he said, I'll tell you what, you crack on, I'm just going to keep training. So it's as simple as that, really. I've not been involved with a contractual situation, the arguments. I just know there's a lot of arguments out there to resolve. We're not, Dillion Whyte's not looking to not take this fight. It's a shot that he's been waiting for.
They're interested in resolving them.
Probably not. I think they've done their press conference now. If they've sold out like they said they have or whatever, so job's done.
Yeah, they're saying like the deal's the deal.
Yeah, but that's fine. And if the deal's the deal, we'll do what we have to do, which is not come willy-nilly to a press conference on Ryanair, aka your Southwest, and we'll see you at the fight.
What do you think about that?
Well, I know I'm watching from the IFL TV interviews that Frank denies those. So, there's always, 3 versions of a story, right? His, Eddie's, and then obviously the truth is somewhere in between. So,
right.
Either way, it's kind of like, hasn't been too bad, has it? I think it's grown the story even more. Is Dillion Whyte going to sign? Is he going to show up to the fight? Why is he not talking? So either way, the build-up's been okay, but I think everyone kind of wanted them to go back and forth because, before the fight had been signed, they used to go back and forth where, Dillion Whyte would call Tyson Fury by his real name instead of calling him Tyson Fury and, claims that, he'd beat him up in sparring and stuff like that. So I think everyone was looking forward to those and
he would call Tyson Fury by his real name?
Yeah, I think his first name is Anthony, isn't it? Tyson's his middle name.
Oh, man. I wasn't even aware of that this whole time. That makes sense. And I was like, Tyson as a first name? I thought this lines up way too perfectly. That's news to me. I mean, I don't really go around and like dissect people's names. Obviously, there's like stage names and names for marketing and stuff like that. But
sorry, Luke.
Okay.
Luke Tyson Fury.
Okay. This whole time I thought it was his first name was Tyson. I was like, man. I was like, they were really big Mike Tyson fans back in the day, huh? It really lined up for his career and for history. So it is. I'm gonna start calling him Luke. Luke Fury. Does that have the same ring to it? Probably not.
No.
But yeah, like you said, I think the truth is somewhere in between. Frank Warren, Tyson Fury's promoter, says one thing. Eddie Hearn says another. But I think at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it gives more publicity to this fight. A lot more people are interested. Imagine how many people are going to be tuned in or look up when they do come face to face at the press conference on fight week. It's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to get a lot. Let's see how the buy rate does. Let's see how the buy rate. It's pay-per-view over there, right?
Pay-per-view, and then it's done. They're going to say about 100,000 seats at Wembley.
Yeah, and they've already sold like 80,000.
I think they've sold like 80 or 90,000, and they're asking for permission to install 10,000 more for the fight. And Frank said in an interview today that that he thinks that should get granted, and they'll sell out pretty fast.
Right. So yeah, let's see what happens. Either way, I think it's in terms of publicity for this upcoming fight, I think it's working because people are talking about it. People are talking about how unprofessional Dillion Whyte is. I've seen a lot of like reporters and some other people saying it's unprofessional of him to do that and stuff like that. But they're talking about it. They're talking about the fight. How do we know that this isn't getting more people interested or more intrigued by this matchup than if Dillion Whyte showed up and actually was at the press conference. Who knows? Nobody knows that. How do you measure that? If they do a significant buy rate for the pay-per-view after the event, after all the buys are tallied, then is everybody going to see, oh, well, whatever they did, whatever they both did, how they both contributed to the publicity of the event, it worked. Dillion Whyte not showing up, it made people, kind of question like, oh, I don't know what's going on with him, but I'm really interested. Why didn't he show up? I mean, it's intriguing because you don't know. Eddie Hearn pretty much is the first one to be saying what Dillion Whyte has been thinking, supposedly. Dillion Whyte hasn't said anything. He hasn't posted anything, I don't think, right?
No, nothing.
So we haven't heard anything directly from him. It's been all stuff secondhand. And I mean, Eddie Hearn is his promoter, right? So, I mean, I'm assuming that's a credible avenue of information. But like you said, at the end of the day, they're all promoters here. They're all heavy egos and personalities. So who knows who's telling the truth? Who knows who's adding a little bit of lie here? So, somewhere in the middle is what we're actually looking for. And then also Luke Tyson Fury, told BT Sport that he will retire after fighting Dillion Whyte, as he has enough money and doesn't want to be one of those fighters that goes on too long. I don't believe this for a second. I think this is just Fury being Fury, just like when he talked about one of his previous fights over here in Las Vegas, how it might have been the second Wilder fight, how he masturbates 7 times a day or something like that. I think it's just Fury saying stuff to get publicity and get some headlines. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Tyson just said stuff, so people will buy it thinking it's going to be his last fight. So people buy the pay-per-view because it's the last chance to see him. It's like anything with the Tyson Fury interview. One day he says one thing, another day he says another. Just really depends whether he's blowing hot and cold when you watch his interviews.
Right. And then Angel Fernandez has been announced by Anthony Joshua in an interview, I believe, with Behind the Gloves, as to be the lead trainer for Anthony Joshua. Angel Fernandez has been on the last round here before in the past as a guest. Very knowledgeable, very great guest. Very deep thinker, very analytical. I don't think a lot of us expected this. Were you surprised about this choice?
It did kind of like make sense eventually, because I kept saying, why has he not announced his new trainer? Like, the fight's getting closer and closer and closer. And I suppose the whole time, he's been training with Angel Fernandez and he just hadn't announced it. So once you look at it like that, you're like, okay, kind of makes sense. But, is he going to be able to change enough for him to beat Usyk? I doubt it. Maybe he could change him enough to beat some of the other heavyweights. But I think the problem is Usyk's too small, too quick, and you can't touch him. You can't pin him down.
So you don't think it's really going to make a difference?
Not for that fight.
But maybe for other fights?
Maybe later down the line when he faces, like Dillion Whyte again or something like that, we'll see him, changing style away from the kind of English amateur scene. But I don't see it changing much in the outcome of the Usyk fight. If that goes ahead with what's happening in the Ukraine, Joshua might kind of get away from that and go and fight somebody else.
That's true, though. I could see. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if AJ fights somebody else in between, because he's like, okay, well, Usyk, he's obviously a little bit busy with the Russia-Ukraine conflict over there, and I think it's going to get to a point where Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua are going to be like, okay, well, let's keep you active. We'll fight somebody in the meantime, because they're not going to say, oh, Usyk, you need to get over here and fight. They're, with the situation as sensitive as that, that's definitely not going to happen. Also, Eddie Hearn also stated that Amir Khan will activate his rematch clause against Kell Brook. I think this is very surprising. I don't think people want to see a second fight. Kell Brook said that he's I guess he's down for it. I mean, he has to be down for it. He's legally obligated. And I'm sure there's a guarantee for Brook in the second fight anyway. He's like, oh, okay, I can make some more money. And it was obviously an easy fight for Brooks, so it was an easy night. So he said, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it again. I'll whoop him again." Do you think this is really going to happen?
It sounds like Amir is trying to activate it and then sell it. Yeah, I think it sounds like he's trying to activate the rematch clause, so he has to fight Kell and then told Eddie, like, "Hey, you can buy it, and I won't fight him."
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, making room for Conor Benn.
Yeah. Amir Khan is, he is pretty savvy. Can't get to this point without being savvy enough, especially on the business side. Or maybe he gets paid out. Like, hey, Brooke, Brooke wants to fight Conor Benn or whoever, Chris Eubank. But how about we pay you out to invalidate that clause? Oh, okay, pay me $3 million or something like that. Khan knows what he's doing. I mean, I'd be surprised if a second matchup happens, a rematch. I'd be very, very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised. But who knows? Who knows? But once again, guys, we appreciate you listening to this week's episode of the Last Round podcast. Like I said, we were in San Diego, California this past weekend for the Chocolatito Gonzalez, Ray Martinez bout on DAZN with the lead promotion as Matchroom Boxing. Obviously we'll try to make it to as many events as we can. We were planning on getting some interviews while we were there, but the logistical obstacles that we ran into, especially after the fight, as we were waiting for the press conference and all that, it was all over the place. So it was hard for us to get some sit down interviews, even for like 15-20 minutes with some people. So we apologize for that, but we still got some content for you guys during fight week of last week. Mike, you were at the weigh-in last Friday, and then obviously I met you down there for actual fight night. And then also this week, Alexis Rocha had his media workout in Santa Ana, California. He's on the undercard of the Virgil Ortiz, Michael McKinson matchup on March 19th on DAZN at the Galen Center at USC, the University of Southern California. He's facing off against Blair Cobbs, which is a pretty interesting matchup. These two Golden Boy fighters, I'm interested to see that matchup. Blair Cobbs is also having his media workout this week in Los Angeles as well. I'm very interested to see those two fights. Alexis Rocha, Southern California fighter, him and his brother Ronnie Rios, they've been on the show a couple times before, friends of the show. Blair Cobbs has been on the show before, so I'm very interested to see both of these fighters go at it. But as we round towards the finish line, before we completely sign off, Mike, go ahead and let them know once again where they can find us and follow us.
We're at the Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing the Virgil Ortiz Jr., Michael McKinson, Regis Prograis, Tyrone McKenna, Sonny Edwards, Mohamed Wasim, Rocha, and Cobbs, and many more. Busy weekend.
Many, many more as we get closer to April, May, going to be very, very busy months of boxing throughout the world. So once again, for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is the Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.